I know that Boris made a series. He's working on a series of films unknown Holocaust. And I remember that when we talked for the first time, it was several years ago, Boris presented the previous parts of this project. The film about Latvia, the drawers of memory, на русский вы переводите как ящички памяти.
Ящички памяти.
Ящички памяти. Yeah, this is
No, English and Hebrew it's okay, in Russian it's
Russian, yeah.
a little bit tricky.
So this is, in my opinion, is the most personal film by Boris because he was born in Latvia, and that is
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So that's my first question. Why unfortunately?
Look, I hate Latvia. I escaped from Latvia at age 24 and came to Israel. So it was lost years. For me, it was lost years, yes, in 71.
In 71. So you were a young guy. I believe you were ambitious. You had plans. You had aspirations. What happened? Why did you emigrate?
Look, starting more around 1965, 66, before the 6 Days War, I became, after Umbula. Umbula is 1946, 64. Age 17, around age 18, I became what you call now Zionist. And I believe that I won't be, and I must be in Israel.
So you were traced, you were watched by KGB?
Even spent, as you know from this film, 1 year in KGB prison. So it's really a story what I told this film.
So you came to Israel. So what did you do? What was your first engagement? You were studying. You got a job.
No, I and my wife we went to kibbutz. So I worked in orange plantation for 2 years, and then in between I studied in first course at Tel Aviv University. They started television and film school, and I graduated after 4 years. And then I spent a lot of years in documentary, in different positions.
Why documentary? Because I believe you had another choice to make feature films.
It's a question of imagination. Okay, I didn't have imagination for feature films, so I stayed in real life.
Then, as far as I know, you were you become a part of the Yad Vashem group, right? You were hired by Yad Vashem. So tell me a little bit more about what did you do there. I know that you were dealing with identifying Jewish victims of the Holocaust, right?
Look, more or less 7 years ago, something really changed in my life. After different positions, after a lot of years in documentary, I get proposal by Yad Vashem to start and then to lead special project to cover the names of Jews who was killed in Soviet territories during Holocaust years. That thing under German occupation. And it took for me 7 years. I traveled in more around 160 cities, towns, villages, all around what I later called the country of the land of unknown Holocaust. It's the name of my documentary project. And after 7 years, I started this one. The first film was about Belarus, and the The Road to Babi Yar is the last one, the film number 8. Totally 11 hours, 30 minutes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember that I read that you have a new project in the pipeline. It's about
the
Soviet Union.
The mystery
of treatment of
the mystery of the Black Book.
Yes.
Is the story why immediately after ending of the World War II, Stalin decided to hide information, materials, documentation about what happened for Jews in Soviet occupied territories. Does mean to hide the Holocaust history in Soviet Union and how it was connected with future details that Stalin decided against Jews. Does mean to cut all institution of Jewish culture, to take away a lot of Jews, almost all of them, from high-ranking position in Soviet Union, and how during only 5 years, from 1948 to 1953, Jews lost all their position as normal Soviet citizens and became second-degree citizens in Soviet Union, and starting then until the end of Soviet Union in the late 80s. So it's our story.
So do you consider the Soviet policy of persecuting Jews and the anti-Semitism of that time, the end of 40s and the beginning of 50s, as a continuation of Holocaust?
For my position, I don't believe that everybody will agree with me. Yes, it was if Soviet Union, if Stalin, let's imagine, will recognize that Holocaust happened, does mean that Jews, and specifically Soviet Jews, because Holocaust started in Soviet Union occupied territories. So Jews was chosen by Nazis as chosen for annihilation people. After all this story, you must save them. You must keep their memory. You must to take them all possibility for recovering. It was impossible for Soviet politics. And then the only choice for Stalin was to take all memory about Holocaust out, to clean it from normal official political memory.
I want to assure you that you will have a chance to ask questions, and I will open the floor to questions. But I want to ask a couple of questions myself, because I'm very curious about one aspect of these two films. I noticed that you're covering the problem of collaborators. At the same time, you absolutely ignore the righteous, people who saved Jews, who helped them to survive Holocaust. Why is that?
I tell you my answer, maybe it's not so popular. All my project is about killing. It's about death. My story is that 2,007,100 Jews in Soviet Union territories, almost half of 6 million victims, was killed by Nazis as their collaborators. It's the first time when you see all this story. And I don't want to take other stories. It's about death, not about saving, not about Soviet army, not about others' escapation. It's my story. And look, Holocaust is a real story about murder, about death. If you take proportionally what taken, let's say, to Soviet Jews, only 100,000 until 120,000 Soviet Jews saved or was saved in Soviet occupied by Germans territories, included partisans, included all occupation. Does mean 2,700,000 versus 100,000 is proportion. And my story is about Holocaust, not about what happened to Jews all around in 4 or 5 years of World War II. It was my choice. You can keep it or don't read it, but it's my answer.
You know what, Boris, when you said that your films are about death, not survival, and exactly the same answer I got from Claude Lanzmann. I have had the privilege to interview him in New York when he came like 10 years ago to present one of his Shoah films. And he said the same thing. My films are about death, not survival. And that, defines the concept, the principal concept of your films and the films of Claude Lanzmann. And I could not compare it with anything else. It's just you are unique in this.
Thank you for compliment, but
yeah.
no.
So what about
Lanzmann is classical for this theme.
Yeah, but the thing is that we know films which appear in our movie houses and which were produced in Russia, in the United States, and other countries. Mostly they're about survival. And there is a simple explanation to that, because people want to have hope. They don't want to be in despair. They don't want to be, terrorized by what is shown on the screen. So they need some kind of fantasies or fairy tales, or just simply the survival stories. And my last question before I open the floor, I want to ask you about your reaction to what you were doing for years. I mean, these films are very hard to watch. It's very painful. Even if you prepare yourself and somehow say, okay, that was a long time ago, and somehow try to deal with it. But I think it's very, very painful to watch, and I can imagine how painful it to delve into this material on a daily basis and to deal with all these horror stories, all these tragedies of human suffering. And I recall in these two films there are moments when it's just unbelievable pain. And the old guy who remembers how his family was slaughtered in his presence. My question to Boris is, how do you cope with this?
Please don't ask me.
Why?
Because any question that will be liar. If I tell you that I am okay, I don't suffer, I can to take it from me, you don't believe me. If I tell you, look, it was very difficult, you don't believe me. So I don't have any answer for this question.
Okay, so your questions, please.
I appreciate the truth, and I think it's important to have the absolute truth in these films and not fairy tales. And I commend the filmmaker for that. Very important.
Thank you. Please, your questions.
Oh, well, I had a question about the sterilization. Was that an isolated incident, or was that also prevalent in other places?
Look, we know that it's not only case with sterilization, but I'm not historian. I repeat and repeat, I am storyteller. So I tell this story, and I don't want to tell about what I heard, what I read, what I seen. For me, it was only one story, and I checked it, because all my evidence, all my stories, not mine, my films, They are very, very well documented. I didn't find or show any new stories that historians don't know. I only took them from the shadow to the screen. That's all.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question, but first I want to thank
You have microphone, yeah.
I have a question, but first I want to thank you. Yes, you know, to watch it's a heartbreaking to do it. You are a hero, you have a lot of courage.
No, I'm not hero, please.
Thank you for bringing him to us.
Thank to Regina and to Mark.
Yeah. By the way, I was born in Leningrad, went through blockade with my family, and then they moved to Riga. So I lived in Riga 30 years, and then emigrated from Riga. My question is, when people say 6 million, so according to you, that's included 2.5 million Jews on the Soviet territories or not?
Sit down, please. Not according to me. It includes 2 million, more or less 700,000 Jews, Soviet citizens or Soviet occupied territories. That means almost half. From 6 million, they are Soviets. But it really is a novel Holocaust, because during all Soviet years, it was hidden from total memorialization, our memorialization.
How did they know the number 2.5 million?
No, it's documented, as I told you. It's documented, there are numbers, now, when we know about archives, we have evidence, we have documents, different documents, it's all around accepted. The less is 2.5 million. The maximum is 2,800,000. But it's more or less, please. It's not important what's exactly number. For me, it's important that we now started to know that it's happened and how it happened.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Good evening, my name is Khidekel. First of all, I wanted to thank Boris, of course, Regina and Oleg. I know him for a long time, Regina too. Thank you so much for showing this very impressive and heartbreaking, painful truth. I'm a grandson of Holocaust victim. My grandmother was killed in Minsk ghetto with 2 children. So to me it's personal. I feel like it's about myself. My question is about present, about what's going on right now. You asked this question, by the way, in Ukraine and even in Riga. And I ask myself all the time what's going on in New York and in America all the time. I see a rise of anti-Semitism. How do you feel that currently, right now, Latvia and Ukraine dealing with Holocaust memory, are they ready to acknowledge it? Did they learn anything from it? Or it's like, oh, it's a past, like, come back to the old time anti-Semitism?
Look, by the way, in my first film, the Guardians of Remembrance, you can see the story about Tuchinka at the Minsk ghetto. About Latvia, look, yes, I asked Dizis Berzinch about today's memory in Latvia. It was not occasionally, because his specialization is about the memory of Holocaust in today's Latvia. It was not occasionally question. I didn't ask this question in Ukraine because it supposed to be the third part of my story. That means, if you remember this film, you're starting from hate, then men's, intelligentsia, then we go to what Germans, what Nazis wanted from Ukraine, and then the total excavation and the story of collaboration. I believe that the question that I asked in film about Latvia, as this is the question. If Latvians will be ready to accept Holocaust as their history, not Soviets, not Jews, not Soviet Jews, but their history. It's a question. It's a question that equal to Poland, to Ukraine, to Lithuania, to all countries. I don't have any answer. But today, we are far from this accepting. In Ukraine, in Lithuania, and in other different places. If it's possible that this gap will be closed, that Lithuanians, Latvians, Ukrainians, I mentioned only my territory, because I don't know exactly what happened in Poland, or I know about a little bit about Romania, because two of my films they are about Transnistria, Romania's occupied territories. If this gap can be closed, I don't know. If you ask me if I have markers that it can be, I'm not optimistic. I answer to your question?
Very sad, very sad.
Yeah, very sad.
Okay, any more questions?
I have a question. So, have these films been shown in Latvia?
Yeah, the film was shown in Ukraine, Latvia, and you can see all my films in free internet. Please put Boris Maftsir and you see immediately all 8 films for free viewing.
Boris,
Okay, the last question. Yeah, please.
yes, please, go ahead.
You mentioned that all the testimonies have been verified by the professional staff of
No testimonies. Cases, historian cases, does mean what happened in each place. For example, that Bauska, what happened in Bauska. Liepaja, what happened in Liepaja. Ternopil, what happened in Ternopil.
My question, as a scholar, were there cases where have been questioned and not answered that were given to you after being tested by Yad Vashem experts were not included in your film?
I don't have any connection with Yad Vashem, except that I spent 7 years in my Yad Vashem project. But films is totally independent, first of all. Secondly, please, I want to explain. It's big difference between historian truth. Does mean, let's take any example from here. A small village. If it happened in Mirapol, really, or this young so-called lady want to tell our story. Not, it's really happened and it is written. It's evidence that it happened. The oral history is different and is very tricky. It's your only evidence. By the way, in classical work of Landsman is the same. When the barber tell you a story about what happened in before the door to gas camera, it's his story. You don't know if really he saw his relative. You don't know if really what he will tell you, it's happened. It's his story. You believe or not believe. But you believe because the whole build-up by Landsman is about what was the stage of this chamber. in my films is the same principle. If we are going to Mirapol with this story, with what happens there, we know that it's really happened. We know from different documents, Czech documents, Slovaks, the Slovaks were there, German documents, Soviet documents, but if Leonid Polishuk tell us what we saw, it's his story. You accept it or not accept it, exactly as in any trial. You have witness, and he tell you what he saw. So in oral history, Lanzmann started with it. It depends how you make all stage. If you feel that it really happened in this place, the same weather, the same time, you go with it. If not, you can tell, look, leave me. It's only fake stories. So it's not approved by historians. What I did, it must be approved by you, by audience. My obligation is to tell you the true story. If I succeeded, you must decide about it.
Okay. Yes, please.
Are those documents which were sealed by Stalin, are they released now after so many years? People can study them or not yet?
They are, last year, when we filmed in Moscow, government official archive, and I spoke with Professor Tatiana Pavlova. She was responsible for releasing all documents about the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee and the Black Book. He told me that all materials was released in please listen very well, 56. After rehabilitation, purification, that was given to all members of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, so it was or killed or arrested and spent years in Gulag, more around 200 people. It was given in almost immediately after rehabilitation. Until 1989, if I remember it, it was nobody from Soviet Union historians asked for permission to see those documents. Nobody. It was impossible from not Soviet historians because Soviet Union was closed. You see, Moses, along 30 years, it was open and not needed by anybody. And the Black Book was published in Jerusalem in 1980, in post-Soviet Lithuania in 1993, and finally in Moscow 4 years ago, the first time.
So I think we're almost done. But Boris, let me ask you. Recently, I read some statistics about the Holocaust. That 1/3 of Americans today do not believe that 6 million Jews died. And my question is, what should we do? What has to be done?
Wait 10 years. And then it will be not 1/3, it will be maybe 50%, and then 60, and then 70, and finally it will be 95% will not be believed that the Holocaust happened.
Okay, so
it's a very cruel answer, but it will be.
So why are you so pessimistic?
Look, people People don't like story about death, killing, murder. It happened far away from here. It happened a long years ago. Who remember now, for example, the expulsion of Jews from Spain? What happened there? In Spain, from 600,000 Jews, 200,000 was killed, 200,000 became Christians, and 200,000 escaped to other countries and Jews. But who remember what happened there? Holocaust is for normal so-called people the Jewish story. It's not their story. Because it was Jewish story, it was reason that not England, not American, didn't want to spend energy to bomb bombing Oswestime. Jews, it was the first purpose to save them. Not for Soviets, not for others. It's Jewish story. So, when time will go, the next generation, or next generation, will forget about all. Maybe we'll have Yad Vashem, Washington Museum, Jewish Museum, so it will be all around. It's no chance that it will be the main story for all of us, all of them. All of us, I don't mean us. I mean all normal people.
You know, everything in me resists this forecast, but who knows? Okay, any more questions, please? Okay, so
Okay, thank you very much. Tודה רבה, большое спасибо.
let us thank Boris Maftsir for this film and for this coming to New York.
If there are no more questions, I want to present Boris with this little award, symbolical award.
Here written that I'm Boris Maftsir.
Yeah, because we are very thankful to Boris that he gave our history back. We all children, grandchildren of Holocaust victims and survivors. I carry name of my murdered grandmother, but we didn't know these details. We didn't know their stories. We didn't know what happened at the last moment. And thanks to Boris, now we know much more about our ancestors and about what happened in our history. Thank you very much, because it takes a lot of courage to do this, to create this series, and we will continue to show them. Thank you.
Все хорошо.
Спасибо, Олег.